Hello everyone, and welcome to a brief presentation highlighting the key benefits of VCarve Desktop and how they will help showcase your machine capabilities. The demo is based on a 3D sign using 3D clip-up files and applying a range of toolpath options to build a sign that looks more complicated than many would expect. This is based on the existing golf award that would normally take 2 videos lasting up to 40 minutes, as it shows all the parameters for each function. However, this demo is a fast-paced presentation to hopefully excite a new prospect with a vast array of software and machine action in just 20 minutes. So just before I start building the 3D design, we should consider a couple of concerns that some prospects may ask. Question 1. Can VCarve create 3D designs? Question 2. Isn't 3D carving way more difficult? Okay, so let's move straight into the software. You can see on the screen the finished project. We have the 2D view on the left hand side and the 3D view on the right hand side. We can see a selection of 3D clip-up files that have been added into the project along with some vectors to create the completed design. So now we're going to move straight in and create a new project. So I'm going to go to File, New. And this is going to be a 11 inch by 11 inch by half inch. It's single sided. Our XY datum is in the center and a high model resolution. And we're going to go straight in now and start creating one of the initial sort of outer perimeter circles. And I select the center and just move out to the size of 4. And just going to close that down and come straight up now and start adding the design that we're going to form the whole model for. So I'm going to select that now and just scale that up to size and get it into location and just try and make sure this is roughly fitting with this side, and that looks kind of nice in that position there. Okay, so with that I feel happy with its sort of location. We now need to start adding in the 3D clip art files. So with that I'm going to go down to the bottom menu, clip art, and I'm going to go up to decorative now and scroll down and select the very simple laurel, which I'm now going to just place on the model, and we can see I'm just sort of positioning that in screen, and I'm going to have the sort of tiled side so we can see the 2D view on the left and the 3D view on the right. Now one thing I will just double check is I will make sure that's located directly in the center. Okay, and I'm happy with its sort of position, and we now need to think about adding the sort of golf tee into that particular centerpiece. So I'm going to go down to the clip art now and select the objects and people and just scroll down, and we can see the golf ball and just drag that across. And we can see that's currently the wrong size. So I'm just going to scroll this down now. So I'm going to dynamically get it about the right size. And I think it's still a little bit too big. And we'll just sort of position that right. Okay, so I'm sort of happy with that position there. And once again, I will just make sure the location is center. So we'll just get that in the middle. Okay, and now look to start building the sort of ribbon that goes over the top of the laurel. So with that, down to the clip art and go down to the ribbons and select the ribbon 4 and just simply pop that across into the 2D view. We can see it in the 3D view on the right, and I'm just going to now move this down and get this sort of correct location, and once again I will just make sure it's centered. So with that now I need to just sort of piece the actual 3 bits of clip art together, make sure they are the sort of correct way they're moving on top of each other, and also the size. So in the modeling option there we can see the 3 components now, and I'm just going to go down to the ribbon there and go into the sort of change the properties, and I'm going to set this now to be 0.25. okay, and just I'm going to close that down, and we can see that's just lifting that now above the actual laurel. And now down to the golf tee, and once again I'm going to change this away from its original sort of 0.27 down to 0.25, and we'll do the sort of laurel wreath and just change that now from 0.29 down to 0.25. Okay, so we're now looking to build a sort of set of components that are going to be sort of 1/4 of an inch, and this is going to be formed into a larger material which is going to be 1/2 an inch. Okay, So now I need to think about really the text that we're going to create over the top of the ribbon. Well, what I'm going to do first is actually take the original image and go down to the layer and just undraw that now and create a new layer, and this is going to be called text. So with that, I'm going to have that text and have that highlighted, and now I'm just going to come back down into the drawing view and go to the draw line and just zoom in now and pick up the sort of bottom left hand corner there, somewhere in the center there, and then back down to the lower right. Okay, and just if we sort of zoom back out there, we can see that we've got that simple vector. Select that now. I'm going to go into the node editing, which is N on the keyboard, and then just quickly simplify that, and to create that sort of shape that fits that, maybe even sort of slightly change the vector so it fits exactly. And now look to add some text. So with that, I can come straight across to the draw text. This is going to be Arial, it's going to be bold, it's going to be just 0.35 inches height, and I'm simply going to select on here and say hole in one. So with that, I can come out there now and just go across and shift and pick the sort of the vector that we have at the bottom and then pick the text on a wrap curve. Okay, we can see that's now fitting on there, and I'm just going to raise that up by sort of 75 thou now. We should just lift it up so it's roughly about the same height from top and bottom. So I'm happy with that. So we now can look to create the V-carving toolpath at a later point. So we can see that we're very happy with the centerpiece now, but we need to start building the sort of mold that wraps around the outside of the sign. We're actually going to be, to do that, we're going to be using the molding toolpath at a later point. So what I need to do is just make sure that we raise up our current components to a height of 0.25. So with that, I'm going to come down to the modeling option and select add a plane. So with that now, I'm just going to go to properties and change that from 0 and increase that to 0.25, and just close that down now. And we can see, you can see there that we've raised this up now by 0.25. So in theory, the overall height should be ½ an inch. So with that, I'm just going to close that down now, and now we're going to move across to the machining. Okay, so we've got our 2D view and we've got our 3D view. Okay, so with that now, I'm going to set up the material. Okay, and this should all be set up correctly now. So we've got our ½ inch, and I'm just going to OK that and move straight away and think about really the molding toolpath. Now we already have the sort of perimeter vector, but we now need to think about the actual cross-sectional shape. So with that, I'm going to come to the drawing option. Okay, so we'll go down and select the draw circle, and I'm going to select one that's just basically ½ an inch radius, and just close out now and zoom in, and I'm going to go straight into the node editing mode and remove some of the segments, so using the D on the keyboard. And now I want to think really about how we're going to form this cross-sectional shape. Now outside the perimeter, we will be down to sort of ½ an inch down to 0. But if we go on the inside where the laurel wreath is located, this is actually going to be just down to 0.25. So to do that, I do need to modify the actual cross-sectional shape. So I'm going to go and select the inside one now, and I've just selected it. I'm going to go to right mouse key properties and just move this now upward by 0.25 inches. So with that, I'm just going to apply that and raise it up, and we'll just take a little bit of a closer look here. And I'm just going to change this to Bezier and just make sure that that's nice and flat at the top. And I'm going to look to add in an extra point here with I on the keyboard, and just now manipulate this to create sort of a nice shape here, which will look a nice form when we create the molding. So we can zoom out now, and we can see the outer perimeter and the cross-sectional shape. So with this, I'm going to come straight across now and look at the actual toolpath that will generate. Okay, so with that, I'm going to move back to the molding toolpath and select now the actual perimeter, and then shift and pick the cross section. And we've selected two strategies. We have the ball nose for the finishing, but also the end mill 1/4 inch for the sort of area clearance. And I'm going to come straight down now and just actually calculate that. So we're going to see the two different toolpath types. I'm just going to switch the sort of finish one off, and we can just see the actual roughing strategy there. And with that, I'm actually going to just show that in the simulation. So I'm just going to play that. So we can see just the initial sort of clearance, and now come down and select now the actual sort of finish for the actual molding shape, and we'll just apply that in the simulation as well. And this should show a really nice 3D form that, as you can see there, closely follows that sort of 2D cross-section view that we've got on the left-hand side, that we now have that in that 3D form when we actually go to create the toolpath and simulate it, which is a really great tool because that has saved us the need to actually physically create any sort of component, and the fact that we also have the toolpath following the actual direction of the molding technique. So we're now going to move across now and start to look at how we're going to remove the most of the material in the center of the molding region. So we're going to now look at the original outer perimeter, but what we need to do is just to offset that inwards to limit the location for the roughing and the 3D finishing. So I'm just going to select the actual vector now and come across to the drawing option and select offset. We're going to go inwards by 0.25 of an inch, offset that inwards. That is now already the selected option. We're going to move directly across to the 3D roughing strategy now, and I'm going to come and select the roughing toolpath, and we're going to be using a 1/4 inch end mill. We're going to be monitoring the toolpath restricted to sort of the selected vector, machining allowance now, and it's going to be just a Z level strategy, and straight down now and calculate. So this will help remove a lot of the material before we look to create the 3D finishing. So whilst that's selected, I'm now going to just simulate that now to show the amount of clearance. Okay, so we've removed a lot of the material now, and finally we need to sort of create a finishing strategy that we're going to use as an offset strategy over this region in just one pass to get the full detail. So once again, we've got the same vector selected. I'm just going to close out the simulation now, come up to the 3D finishing, and we're going to use a tapered ball nose tool here. And once again, we're going to be limited to a selected vector. We're going to use the offset strategy and go straight to calculate. And it's going to take a little bit of time because it's quite a dense strategy. So we're going to now have a sort of offset strategy to create the full detail all the way across the sort of 3D clip art files in the center of the sign. So we can see that now, and if we zoom in, we can see that sort of the way that toolpath is actually going to be offsetting across that part, creating the finished detail. So I'm just going to simulate that now, and we can obviously then get a nice in-depth look at what that toolpath would look like, obviously before we actually went to machine it. So once that's simulated, we can then look to create the V-carving for the hole-in-one. Okay, so that's good now. We've got the molding, we've got the roughing for the sort of main region there, and the 3D finishing to create the full shape of the sort of laurel wreath and the golf and the actual ribbon. So I'm now going to come across now and select the text hole-in-one, just close out the simulation, go across to the V-carving option, and we're going to go straight down with the tool, which in this case is a 90° 1 1/4 inch, and just go straight in and calculate that. We can see, if we zoom in there, we can see that now that's coming up the corners to create a nice clean sharp finish, and we'll just also apply that to see what that will look like. So that's nice. Now we'll see we're very nearly complete, and we're going to move across to create just the simple sort of profiling around the outside, in which case I'm going to select the outer perimeter and just come to the profiling option, and we're going to use a 1/2 inch end mill now. Our cut depth is going to be just a tad over the top of our 1/2 inch, but what we do need to do is select an allowance offset, and this is going to be 1 inch now, because ideally where we've created the molding, we need to actually do the profile at 1 inch outside that profile. So I'm going to zoom back down now, calculate that, and come straight through. We can see the actual toolpath now, and we're just going to simulate that now, and hopefully what we'll then have is it'll all be machined straight the way through, and we'll just be able to pick out the small components now so we can have our finished part. Okay, so with that now, I'm going to come straight to the 3D view, and we're just going to simply remove the excess material, and we'll just have at the end the finished part we've got, and that's complete, as we can see on the screen. Okay, so to summarize, on the first question, can VCarve create 3D designs? Well, the answer is yes, it can. We can see the direct import of 3D files such as STL, OBJ, or 3DM files, etc. You can import a vast array of 3D clip-up files. We've seen that with the laurel wreath, the golf pin, and of course the ribbon. We can also add the additional or purchase the extra clip art files through Design and Make. And you can see there's a vast array of large sort of projects, single files, collections, etc. that really can add to your existing clip art. And then, of course, we've looked in the software here, the ability to use the easy assembly tools such as add and merge to create the sort of number of files when you compile them together in the particular component. We've got an instant 3D view, so it enables us to feel comfortable about what you're going to actually start creating toolpaths for. And one thing that is particularly exciting is the molding toolpath, since it builds the 3D shape from essentially 2D geometry. And finally, on second number 2, which is, isn't 3D carving way more difficult? Well, the answer is no, it doesn't have to be. We have simple, intuitive 3D toolpath types such as 3D roughing, 3D finishing, and the molding toolpath. You can easily project 3D toolpaths onto the model. So if you wanted, for instance, to take the text and add that sort of V carving over the top of the 3D form, then of course these techniques allow this to project that toolpath onto that 3D form. And then of course the toolpath simulation. No need to keep your fingers crossed before you actually go ahead and start machining. So to conclude, this demo is a fast-paced presentation that should hopefully address some concerns and deliver an exciting 3D component that's easily designed and rapidly machined on one of your CNCs, hopefully resulting in your prospect becoming a customer and placing a CNC purchase. Well, I hope this demo helps. Thank you very much.